Welcome back, everyone. We are looking forward to a what's promises to be quite an interesting chat today. Rochana and I are here to talk about connecting to the unseen world. We are gathered here together. She and I are recording this on Dia de los Muertos, which is a traditional holiday that's all about celebrating our connection to the spirit world and to our ancestors. So today felt like a really good day to have this conversation. Welcome back, Ro. It's always lovely to spend time in your presence.
Hey, Kathleen. Yes, it's great to be back chatting again for the podcast. And we're in this weekend of Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, Samhain, lots of different traditions and cultures around the world recognize that this time of the year, the veil is thinner between our world and the unseen world. And we thought it would be it fun and interesting to talk about how we do connect and experience these other realms or work with ancestors or spirit guides or plant spirits. They all kind of fit into this subject. And are there, flower essences that might assist in this journey?
Yeah, it's a good topic. I'm glad you brought it up. I hadn't really thought about this, and we haven't really talked about this in the on the podcast yet. So great idea. Hopefully everyone who's listening will enjoy this. In the meantime, we have been busy and we are also getting ready for an exciting new year to come. We are closing out the season and in planting stages, let's say, for a floriferous new year to come. We have finished up cohorts on our practitioner training, which were amazing. We had some really beautiful aspiring practitioners, and the sessions were just wonderful. What we've done is we've created this mixed learning model where we have videos that are on demand, and then we have group sessions where it's really rich, the discussions that are taking place. So if that sort of thing is your thing, we would encourage you to join our wait list for the next cohort, which will be this spring. Look forward to that. And we've also initiated a practitioner mentoring group this year, which was really, it was wonderful to be able to be in presence with all of these practitioners, kind of sorting out all the details of what it's like to be a practitioner, giving help on, just the nuts and bolts of running a practice, as well as case study and discussion about plants. So it was a really great group, and we are looking forward to continuing that as well in the new year to come. So if that's part of your interest, if you could use that kind of support, take a look at floweressencestudies.com and join the waitlist. Hope to see you there.
Yeah, the practitioner training is the best one we've done yet, and it keeps getting better. We have such an amazing amount of material pre-recorded, and yet that gives us this spaciousness to really engage and have lots of discussion around the material with the live cohorts. So it it's a format that everyone loves, and it's very adjustable. I like to call it like a choose your own adventure because you can work with the material at the pace of the class, or you can work with it at your own pace and take longer to do the self-study materials. So it's very flexible for everybody's different amount of time that they have to do the training, and to put into that. And even if people are not able to keep up with the recommended schedule, it it still is valuable to be part of these discussions. And so it's not a prerequisite for these discussions. And that way everybody is getting this amazing immersion into the flower essence practitioner content. And it has just been something that all of the students have absolutely loved the way that we're doing it this year. So we will continue to do it this way next year. And we hope if you've been considering it, um, definitely sign up for the wait list.
And as we transition into our primary topic today, one word that you brought forward, Ro, when we were discussing this was animism. And what does that even mean? What are we talking about? I certainly would regard myself as being an animist. I align with that worldview, that everything is endowed with a personhood. Everything is endowed with a consciousness and, even a will. How do you like to talk about animism?
Yeah, the way that I understand it is that everything, objects, places, creatures have like an energy, a spiritual will, if you want to call it that. Um, they're alive. Everything, the world is alive. Animals, plants, and they have as distinct entities. And in working with flower essences and in making flower essences, that's really a part of the process, is engaging with nature and the plant world and having conversations with nature, developing relationships with nature. So it's really a kind of part and parcel of being a flower essence practitioner, um, of working with flower essences. It it is, there is a metaphysical aspect to it. And this is how, animism, there may be philosophical pieces. I haven't honestly delved into all of the the discussion on it, but just the general concept, yeah, I completely align with.
Well, you're right for bringing up that concept of a flower essence itself. It almost requires a certain amount of at least openness to the premise of animism, because what are we doing? What is a flower essence? It's a connection to the spirit of the plant. It's a connection to some sort of an intelligence within the plant. It is a way of, I kind of just like the word capturing, but it creates when you're making a flower essence, you're creating an imprint. You're co-creating with the plant an imprint of the energies of the consciousness of the plant, and putting it in a way that is mobile and is out of time. You can create a flower essence and it can sit on the shelf and wait for you until the time comes that you can use that essence, or that you can spread that essence around. I kind of see my work as a flower essence maker as almost being, sort of an energetic seed bank or a pollinator for the plants. I'm giving them legs. I'm giving them the ability to move around the world and to connect with people in a way that they can't in their physical form. So, it's kind of being a facilitator for this process of a deeper connection with the natural world.
Absolutely. And it's not having being able to be open to this connection is also open to um the unseen world does contain other realms. And part of this, I just want to preface in what we're talking about has nothing to do with like religion. Part of some religions are also dealing with angels, right? Um and others, that other entities that we could consider in this unseen realm. This is we're dealing with spirit. So whatever your belief system is, this can cross those boundaries. So I just want to preface that, because we'll probably use a lot of language that is more metaphysical, that's more magical and shamanic than religious, but that's not to discount religious spirituality at all.
Yeah, great point. It's, working with flower essences doesn't require you to accept anyone's worldview. We are really, we enjoy a plural community and really appreciate that everyone has a different spiritual path and process. And, all of those are welcome here. In an atmosphere of respect and appreciation for each other. Even plants, I think, have different affinities, and so some plants perhaps really have affinities for people of certain types of spirituality or certain types of spiritual paths. Certainly Angelica it comes to mind, and I know that's one that we want to talk about. Do you want to sort of go into that, or give a little more framework on this, some of these conceptual, uh, frameworks for the unseen world?
Yeah, maybe just a few words on the framework. In that, uh, our goal is to help is to become more aware and receptive of the unseen energies around us, of the nature spirits, of um, if there's entities we want to work with, like our ancestors, like our relatives um, that have passed over, angels or power animals, they're it's helpful to understand that I think people get frustrated because they hear people talking about, say, having a conversation with their spirit animal or their spirit guides and wonder why they don't have them or why they, and there is um protocols for getting into these other um, realities that can help facilitate those conversations. And so, as we talk about flower essences that help us to be open to these other realities, I just want to say that there is lots of protocols and processes that can, like shamanic work, and shamanic meaning in indigenous cultures from around the world since the beginning of time have had practices for going into non-ordinary reality. And non-ordinary reality is a term used by Sandra Ingerman and others that teach on this topic, and who I've taken courses from to learn these methods of shamanic journeying. And um, the Celtic, it's similar to the other world in the Celtic work and the dream time with the Australian Aboriginals. And in all these cases, this is where you go to meet your spirit guides or meet your spiritual teachers. And this creates a way that you can do it in a grounded way, in a way that's safe, in a way that enables you to kind of go back and forth between the worlds. It doesn't require um, uh, substances that, like hallucinogenic substances. It doesn't require that kind of plant medicine to do this. So we like to use non-hallucinogenic plant substances to assist in these processes. But also it's just if people haven't come across this or are aware that these ways of working with the unseen world is available and out there, there are so many resources, and we'll definitely put some links in our show notes. But that can really help. So everyone can do it. This is something just like meditation. It's just something that you can learn how to do. And I wanted to let people know that this is something that is available. It's not, like, some people sure might have more of a psychic proclivity that is innate and easy. It comes easier to them, but it is something that you can learn.
I want to address the other side of this coin because there are a lot of people who are frightened of the unseen world, who have been taught to be frightened. I know where I grew up in a fundamentalist religion where I was taught that there were evil spirits all around that were just waiting for me to stray from the path and would seize me and I would be possessed. I mean, it was very intense levels of fear about the unseen world. It's like all the only ones that were hanging around were demons. So, I'm very familiar with the other side of this equation, and I know a lot of people are really concerned about that. And there are also lots of people in our world that we want to also say hi to who have unwanted contact with the unseen world, who have had frightening and distressing and disturbing experiences with the unseen world. So, we're talking about one side of the continuum, but there's also this other side of the continuum that we want to let you know that there is help for that too. Because that this quality of opening up to the unseen world is something that you can choose to do, or it can be something that happened to you as a result of trauma or cultic experience, or who knows what. There's a lot of possibilities, but the essences can help you because they're always working on that spectrum. They can help you with whatever side of that you're on. If you are troubled by these intrusions, you can learn how to turn on and turn off. And that is really where the essences can help.
It's so important to do that other work that you're talking about, that energetic hygiene and being able to open and close your field at will. So yeah, there is a practice to doing this, being safe. There's a certain amount of grounding, stability, and not having a lot of other chaos going on mentally or even like, physically or in any matter, in any way in your life. I mean, if there is chaos around you that you cannot separate yourself from, or that's within you, that's just going to I follow you. So it's part of this practice that we, on this path that we are on. And we definitely will talk about some protective essences. But yeah, if something very um, disturbing, some sort of attachment had happened to somebody unknowingly, this is where you'd want to get professional help from somebody who is well versed in that for sure.
I like what you say about how if your life is really chaotic, and we've all been there. um and that desire to leave this world because the other world is going to be better, or spending a lot of time in the other realms is coming out of a place of not really wanting to be here. We also want to appreciate that we do understand that part of the life cycle, and really want to encourage you know the more that we can be in our bodies, firmly boundaried and protected in our bodies, because that's where the safety is. That's really that foundation from which you can then go out. So I appreciate what you said, Ro, on that, because that's really, really important.
Yeah. I think Angelica is really the first one to talk about. I mean, that out of all the essences that help with opening to spiritual experience, the the Angelica is so nurturing. It feels so comforting and protective and supportive. And I really do feel like it's, an earth angel to um uh just kind of watch over us. I mean, I growing Angelica, I felt like it watched over my garden. It just has that quality um of protection and guidance.
Well, and it has that the really important thing to remember about Angelica is, being humans, we see what's growing above the face of the earth, the foliage and the tall, tall stems and the flowers at top. But so important, it doesn't grow without a really strong root. And it spends its first year cycle growing a really, really strong root. And after that, then it can bloom and extend out. So it's always about, the essence is about, opening to the angelic realm, to feeling protected by the angelic realm. But it's also, let's not forget, about being really rooted and solid in your body and on the earth as well.
Yeah. And there's a couple different kinds of Angelica, different species. And so we have the Angelica, Archangelica that FES makes, and Angelica genuflexa that Alaskan makes. I've made the coastal Angelica here in Northern California, Angelica hendersonii, I believe. And you've also made a Angelica or two, haven't you, Kathleen?
Yeah, I've worked with the hairy Angelica pubescens, which had, my experience of it was less of that connection to the spirit realm and more about the connection to the physical realm. So they may have different perspectives, and that may also be me coming from a certain place as I work with the plant. Plants have so many different faces that they can show. And the more that we work with them and the more people that work with them, the more faces we get to see.
Yeah, it when there's a flower essence that is has, different makers have made with different species, it is really interesting how sometimes they overlap so much. It's very, very close. And at other times, different species of plants can really have a different energy. So you can't, there's no rule of thumb. It's kind of like you have to look at each. And I feel like the Angelica ha- has a lot of overlap with the different species. But of course, each has their own unique, flavor, so to speak. But you can't really go wrong with any of the Angelicas for this theme, I think. How about Forget Me Not? I think that's another really common one to move into.
Well, I appreciate that you've brought the Forget Me Not in, and I just need to bring in that whole family of the Boraginaceae because they really do speak to this connection between heaven and earth. They are all working on that spectrum. So please bring the Forget Me Not, and then I want to talk about some of the other members of the family as well.
Yeah, the Forget Me Not is where I live, it grows everywhere, like every nook and cranny. I mean, it is so prolific in the forest. It is used a bit to work with the beloved deceased. So people that you know in your life or in your family who have passed on, this is the plant that helps work with them. And in the Alaskan forget me not, which is a little bit different, but it is very, again, lots of overlap, lots of similarities. I think that speaks a little bit more to when there's really a deep sense of separation, that profound kind of longing, deep sense of separation that might be a little bit more indicated than the California forget me not. But either way, these beautiful, I mean, they look pretty much identical. And the flowers are just have this quality. And I'm going to let you talk about that, Kathleen, because this is a real part of this family, the Boraginaceae.
And when you're bringing in the Alaskan version of the Forget Me Not, I just wanted to say, hi, Steve Johnson. We miss you. We want to recognize you as one of our ancestors, who's on the other side now, and you are deeply missed and also appreciated because we do reach out to you regularly, for your help and guidance. So, thank you, dear ancestor Steve. Um, the Boraginaceae, if you look closely at the flowers, they have this, all the ones I know anyways, let's start there. I have this kind of celestial blue flower. And there is this strong quality of the uh, light in the plant themselves and in the flowers for sure. You'll see these almost like sparkles on the flowers, and it's because there's a silicaceous quality. So there is this, channeling the light into the plant. And you'll see that in borage, which is such an important essence for us to work with, all of us to be working with. It's one of these frontline essences we use for just loss of faith and hope and loss of courage. And it's just such a good booster. The forget me not is very specific for this, like you said, this character of separation between the worlds, and not feeling like you have ancestors, or not feeling like there are others who care, feeling so isolated from the world. So I get that. And the borage, other borage member that I would like to bring in is hound's tongue. And hound's tongue is such a important essence for those who are really, colonized with the worldview of the world is dead and just material. And, the only thing that matters is, what you can prove scientifically, or, nothing really matters. Nothing really means anything. And that's very much the hound's tongue, is being really locked into that worldview where it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's an impoverished worldview where there's no mystery and there's no magic and there's nothing else but what you can see and touch. And the hound's tongue helps us to open the door to the potential for something else being there. It's one that I really love because it's one that grows in the hills around me. And I just, each time I think of it now, I think of it after the fires, because we had some really terrible fires that just completely wiped out all the vegetation. And there were these colonies of houndstone that I would always go visit in the spring when they bloomed. And they were burned, completely to the ground, very hard, hot burn. And yet they came back, which was it made me feel so happy to see them return untouched. No problem. I got this. I'm back. So, being able to grow back from their roots. So there is that characteristic of being rooted. And they really are sort of plant ancestors to me. I'm not sure that I'm making any sense, but I kind of really dig houndstone.
Yeah, it's another one that pops up wild on my property in the same spot every year, and there's always it's under there's a lot of oak trees here, and so it's like under a very deep pile of oak leaves that it just kind of pushes up through the earth when it comes up every year. And I found that very telling about its signature and the way that it comes through the darkness into the light like that.
Well, really, unlike forget-me-nots, which are, annuals, they pop seeds everywhere, and so they'll come sprouting up thither and yon. They're very hard to get rid of if you're tired of them. But the town's tongue is a rooted plant. It's grows in the same place every single year. So those are very different kinds of personalities, as far as the species go.
And there's also another one in that family, the mountain forget-me-not, which looks just like the the regular or forget-me-nots, but it is a different genus. But it is in that same family. And how do you like using that one?
This isn't one that I've used as much. I know that it's one that, our teacher, Ruth Toledo Altschuler, really loves and has a deep connection to. So I just have to ride on her coattails as far as the connection to this particular plant. But when you're looking at something that grows, in the higher elevations, the one that grows further away from humans, the regular forget-me-not is a garden plant. It's a plant that, will grow through the forests, and it will also grow in people's gardens. So it has a really everyday connection. So it's like everyday spirits. And the mountain forget-me-not is one that you kind of have to journey to. You really, it's not one that will just grow anywhere. So that's kind of how I would think about it, is that's more of the journey kind of connection.
That is my understanding as well. And like you, it's one that I have not worked with as much. But I can really see that in the description of it, talking about it being um, working with spiritual teachers and guides and dealing with soul memories and karmic patterns. So there's more of a thoroughfare to sort of a bigger picture um, uh, connection in that sense. Yeah, very cool. I um I wanted to bring up Lotus really quick because that's one that, people think of as such a spiritual, flower and energy. I mean, my gosh, it's used eh, as a logo for like every kind of new age or healing or metaphysical or I mean it's just everywhere in the world of healing and spirituality. And of course it's from the times of Egypt, this plant has been part of us that we've worked with, that humanity has worked with. And the thing about Lotus is it's because of the way that it grows and in its roots in the mud, it is so rooted that it's really about staying grounded on the spiritual path. So it's not necessarily one for going to those lofty levels that I think might be the misconception. It is about stimulating that creative visualizations to do that connection, but while you're grounded, while you're in service, keeping you um, on that, firmly planted on that path is how I see the lotus.
It's the variation on the, think globally, act locally part of spirituality. It's like, well, yes, you can have very amazing visions, but what are you actually doing with your life? How is this practical? And that I love that you brought Lotus in because it really is practical. It does, when I offer it to a client, they're like, oh, that's wonderful. I want to be enlightened. And I'm like, well, also, let's make sure that you keep your feet really nicely grounded, in your body, in where you walk, in an everyday kind of sense. I would love to bring in some plants that are these protective plants because that quality of staying in your body as the lotus is helping us to ground into the mud, is really an important piece of this conversation of like, how do we maintain that clarity as we aspire to open to the other world or as we aspire to open to higher guidance or wisdom or what have you. I always think one of my first essences is to think of Yarrow, because it's so important, especially for those who have had traumatic experiences or traumatic spiritual experiences, particularly where they had perhaps a premature psychic opening, or even just for people run of the mill, hello, extra excessively sensitive, without the ability to know whose stuff am I processing. This is a bigger topic, and I think we've probably talked about it before, but Yarrow, is a really important essence for this process of opening to spirit, because if you don't have that energetic hygiene that you referred to a minute ago, you're really gonna get muddy results because you don't know who's coming through, you don't know what what they're bringing with them, and you also want to make sure that they leave when their time is done. I'm going to reflect just for a second on the Siberian yarrow, which is an essence that I've made and worked with, from the flora of Asia. And, first off, this is the yarrow that's used, in the divinatory method of the I Ching. This is the yarrow that's used as those yarrow sticks for casting an I Ching oracle. Um, and there's a characteristic of this particular yarrow that when I made it, it was this numinous experience of just feeling really able to see through, but also really protected. I can't even explain it, but it gave me this ability to recognize that, the other people that were around, or the other beings passing around, even the other plant beings that were all around, were all in their places, and I was in my place, and I had plenty of space, and I wasn't feeling overwhelmed by all of it. It was really a beautiful experience of feeling completely protected and safe where I was. And so I'm always thinking about that when I'm thinking about the yarrows, of which there are so many, um, as far as essences go. But having that, cloak of safety is such an important characteristic to working in this realm, honestly, every day, but particularly when we're in this realm.
Totally agree. And especially, as you say, for anyone who is naturally a sensitive person, it's just really crucial to be working with the Yarrows, especially when um, opening yourself up even more than you already are. And doing that energetic hygiene, working with um, some of the maybe more structured practices for meeting and working with spirit guides. I think that's just a good idea. Instead of just sort of opening your doors and say, "Hey, everybody, I'm open," that can really backfire. So we don't want to necessarily do that. Again, the protection and the grounding being such an important part of this, I would, add it in perhaps a couple of the gem elixirs to this conversation. And, black tourmaline is always a great one that I think about when I think about it. Goes so well with the yarrows because it is all about, cleansing that energy that might have gotten in that's not yours and releasing it, and then putting, helping with the protection. So it's just a great energetic hygiene gem elixir. And hematite in general is quite protective. The rainbow hematite, though, is really neat and interesting for this topic because it helps to strengthen our insight and vision, but it's helping in that process. It's helping us to basically ground it to earth. And so it's helping develop that sixth chakra, that third eye, but in a really balanced way. And I just sort of imagine, like that's how rainbows are, right? They kind of start at the earth. When you see them in our line of sight here on the planet, you always see them starting and ending on the earth, on the ground. And so they may go up to these beautiful lofty heights of and sure, they look magical, and they sort of invoke that feeling of magic, but they are grounded to the earth. And so that's how I kind of think of the rainbow hematite as well.
The I totally appreciate you bringing the gem elixirs in this, because this is absolutely must have. So the formula Guardian, from the Alaskan Essences, was created specifically to help people who are moving into spaces that are, it was designed for the process of space clearing, which is an energetic process of, moving energies on that you don't want to have in your home or space anymore. And so those who do that work have are constantly exposed to things that maybe they wouldn't want to be exposed to. And so Guardian helps us with, creating a really strong field, dumping out all the stuff that doesn't belong, and creating a really good boundary. So it is definitely part of an energetic hygiene process that I would recommend. And if I recall correctly, the black tourmaline, I know for sure, is in there, as well as some yarrows and some other essences that are really helpful for that. So just wanted to throw that in there as a formula that might be kind of a good baseline to start with if you want to start with your energetic hygiene.
Yeah, and they also make a purification blend great for that um, cleansing process if you need it. Um, there are a couple others I just want to make sure that we touch on, and one is St. John's wort because that is a plant, and some herbalists also call it St. John's wort to, kind of reclaim it from a feminist viewpoint. And there is something really special about that plant. It is always helping to increase our light. So I kind of think about in the terms of protection. Sometimes you've heard in sports a good offense is better than, I don't know, whatever, a defense, something like that. And um, that's how I look at St. John's wort because it's helping us to have protection and increase our power and protection by increasing our light. And um, that's one that's indicated, especially if there's like out of body experiences or anything where, that you're having that. But we want to connect with the light inside of us and kind of boost that in these scenarios. And St. John's where it helps to do that.
I mean, it does bloom right at the summer solstice here in California. So it's very affiliated with light. It's very affiliated with peak light. So just learning the plants and learning, rather than, not that we are ever like this, but, just being able to read the catalog, but because we are so plant centric and we just absolutely love these plants and learn so much from them, just in the way that they grow and in their families. Just I'd like to bring that part in, that the whole concept of St. John's wort being a light bringer, it's not just because somebody said it is, it's also because that's part of its whole being. If you meet the St. John's wort, it has this absolutely radiant golden flowers just covering the plants, and they bloom right at summer solstice. So it is all about light.
Yeah, it's a fascinating plant that used in herbalism. Uh, it it creates this bright red oil, really helpful for the human body. And so uh, that to me is an energetic indicator that it is something that, is really appropriate for humans, a plant that's really appropriate for humans to work with. And we certainly have um, since antiquity with this plant. Another one, because it's the Halloween weekend, it and there's a witchy vibe. I mean, mugwort is just I can't, we can't leave this conversation, I think, without bringing in mugwort, which I always look at that way, especially the European mugwort. And I feel like I have just an affinity with that plant that's in my like genes and my genetic structure and in my bones. And it's one that definitely helps bring greater awareness of dreams and it really kind of enhance your psychic life. It's one that you maybe not use all the time because of that exactly. Um, I know people who've put the plant like you can put a sprig of it in a dream pillow or under your pillow to have to remember your dreams and some people have had really that I know have had really intense experiences with that and have like ended up throwing the dream pillow across the room out of the bedroom in the middle of the night because they were having really too intense dreams. Of course, that's not everybody's experience, but it's one that uh, people have had experiences. So there are lots of stories and lots of lore, but it's also one that is such a strong um, I think promoter of female agency. And I think that's why it has this reputation of being a witchy plant or a plant for witches. And it has a power, a regalness, and a sovereignty to it that I just love. And I love to tap into that plant energy.
I'm glad you brought mugwort in. The Artemisia family is broad, grows lots of places, and is always treated with respect by the healers who work with it and live near this particular group of plants. I don't think we can close the conversation today without talking about Queen Anne's lace. It's such a good, I think it'll bring a lot of these topics together. It's such an important essence for discernment. It's for that spiritual insight, but it's also for recognizing what's signal and what's noise. And, not every voice is telling you the truth, and not whether those are human voices or whether those are spirit voices. And so Queen Anne's lace can help us to develop that character of discernment, and to feel into whether this is valid and useful information or whether this is noise.
I was exactly going to say the same thing. We can't leave this conversation without Queen Anne's lace. And it's the first flower essence I've ever made. So she really taught me how to open and to be discerning with the information that I was receiving. And, for those who don't know, this is the wild carrot. So it's actually the same genus and species of the carrots that you eat, that you buy at the grocery store, Dacus curata, but it is the wild, it's not a cultivated version, it's the wild version. And the root is not orange, it's like a white color. And, it's very wild. And it's in the family, in the plant family, that, the carrot, um, parsley family, that has a lot of poisonous plants that you really have to know your plant identification if you're going to go out and work with Queen Anne's lace in the wild. You really have to know what you're doing and be more than 100% sure that it's Queen Anne's lace and not poison hemlock or one of those relatives. And uh, I've talked about it a little bit before, with in terms of um, the saying the queen has hairy legs. That's one of the features of it that's different than poison hemlock, and that's one of the ways that people can remember it when looking for it in the wild. But you use more than one way to determine, and that's again that teaching us just discernment, and how to tell the difference between things. So it's really funny. I see that correlation between plant identification with Queen Anne's lace and having to hone your discernment to learn um, it what you're looking at when you're trying to ID it. And then the spiritual aspect, the spiritual discernment, and it has that colored center flower. It's a very white lacy flower with a dark deep burgundy or black single flower in the very center. And now some of them don't have that, and they still are Queen Anne's lace. So it's not always 100% on every flower, but it does represent that third eye, that sixth chakra for vision. And so again, it's bringing in that vision and then grounding it into the earth with that very, very strong, uh, deep taproot that it has, that eventually became carrots in our on our table. But that plant will bring in the grounded discernment and vision that is so necessary in this work. And it is definitely a friend of mine and many.
Well, thank you for sharing your firsthand experiences with Queen Anne's lace. I know that she's a good friend of yours, and I know that I'm also very fond of her. So I hope for all of you who are listening or watching, um, that you take some time to connect to the unseen world in a way that's really grounded and with good boundaries and good energetic hygiene. All these things are important, and are, once again, our plant allies and friends are always here to support us in these spiritual pursuits. But also, this is something that all humans have been doing since the beginning, connecting to our ancestors, giving appreciation and asking for their help. They are around and available for us if we reach out. So, thank you, everyone, for joining us, for listening in, for being part of our community. If you aren't on our mailing list yet, we'd really love for you to be there. You can go to flowerescencestudies.com and join the mailing list, and then you'll find out about all the things that we offer, whether it's the practitioner training coming up next year or our practitioner circles, mentoring groups. And also we do live, free live events, gatherings. We love to support our community and would like for you to be one of them as well. So see you there. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate you, and happy time in nature.
We do. We really appreciate you. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.